Hey guys, it's Morgan, and in my presentation, we're going to talk about conformity of womanhood in Jane Eyre and its subsequent effects on young readers. So, as soon as we finished reading Jane Eyre, I knew that I wanted my research to talk about this, especially because throughout the entire novel, we see Charlotte Bronte take Jane's character from the very beginning and kind of morph her into this Victorian ideal woman. So from the very beginning, we have Jane, who's very outspoken and very much a woman of her own. And through the novel's progression, she gradually changes and fits into this strange mold of what a woman is supposed to be at this time. Whether it be on purpose or not, I'm not sure. Still love the book, but it definitely is something that really piqued my interest, especially when it comes to the young readers that come into reading Jane Eyre and are easily impressionable, and they may see these aspects and think that they, even though not in the Victorian time, still need to fit these ideals. So, one of the first things we have is we do see Jane's feminist acts. We do see her as this woman who is very strong and can hold her own. Like in chapter 4, we watch as she, as a child, goes against her own aunt and verbally tells her, hey, I don't love you. If I was a liar, I would tell you I loved you. She stands up to her, even brings up the dead family members and say, hey, my parents, your husband, they are looking down at you and they know what you are doing to me. And she does not try and act like a perfect child because she knows she's being mistreated. And I think that is a huge thing for the young readers to see as Jane's feminist voice. Another thing is with Helen Burns, we watch as she questions Helen, like, Helen, why do you just let them berate you? And so why do you listen to the authority so easily without fighting back? And Helen just tells her how she accepts it, and that's how the Lord has made it, that she must listen to authority. Clearly she's doing something wrong if the people in authority are reprimanding her. But Jane doesn't see it like that. Jane wants to push against that and be the one who is in control of how she's being perceived, how she's doing things. She does not want others to be doing that. Later on in the novel, we see her leave Rochester after she finds out everything he had done with Bertha. Now, granted, she's mainly leaving because he is still married, and as a woman, Christian woman, she cannot be with a man who is married, especially not in the Victorian time. So she leaves. But again, I see that more as a feminist thing, as she does not let him and his desire to be with her make her stay. She leaves. But then, once she finds her place in the Moore house and meets St. John, he tries to marry her. And once again, she kind of shows these feminist ways and refuses to marry him, saying that she does not want to be a part of him. She wants to be her own person, which I think is a great thing for readers to see. But these moments are some of the few that can make this into a feminist text, while on the other hand, there is so much that makes this book just conform to the womanhood that Jane is forced into. One of the very first things we notice that really becomes impressionable on young readers is Jane's self-doubt. So much through the novel, she does not like her appearance. She constantly points out how she is not pretty, how Rochester is not pretty, but how really no one in this book is pretty besides the rich, stately women who come into Thornfield. I digress. She does not see herself as pretty. In chapter 11, she says, I sometimes regretted that I was not handsomer. I sometimes wished to have rosy cheeks, a straight nose, and small cherry mouth. I desired to be tall, stately, and finely developed in figure. Describing pretty much Blanche Ingram. She tall, stately, finely developed. Jane does not see the attributes of a Victorian woman in herself, and she berates herself constantly. One of the scholars says the theme of beauty punctuates the novel, and Jane Eyre is aware of her failure to match cultural standards of beauty. She knows she's not the standard, and while really that shouldn't be a problem, that she's beautiful without being in the standards, the way she talks about herself and makes it so known that she does not like the way she looks, it makes an impression on young readers who may begin to think, oh, I shouldn't like the way I look. If this book character who is so strong doesn't like the way she looks, maybe I don't like the way I look. And it becomes an issue of characters seeing themselves in Jane but taking it too far because of that self-doubt. Another huge thing that kind of ties into the self-doubt is the competition of other women. A lot of times in womanhood, especially the ideal womanhood, women must be better than another. There's no camaraderie. So much between Jane and Miss Ingram is jealousy. Right off the bat, Jane tries to tell readers, I'm not jealous. That's not what I feel. But it's obvious that, especially whenever Jane thinks Rochester is going to marry Miss Ingram, she knows she's jealous. Readers know she's jealous because she wants to be in that position. On that, Miss Ingram and Jane, they are not friendly with one another. Especially when it comes to Miss Ingram's comments towards Jane, she out loud will say things to her that are quite rude. She calls her too stupid to understand a game, calls her a little creature. She does not see her as competition because in her head, Jane is not worth that. But with that, there's that lack of female friendship. There's no, in our time of feminists and feminism culture, there's no women supporting women. There's no friendship. There's only competition. And another scholar says, Blanche Ingram, who can be seen as Jane Eyre's foil, is the ideal 19th century angel, an unrealistic male-created ideal. Miss Ingram is that ideal Victorian woman. She is the one that men want to be with. But again, she is that competition for Jane. And for readers, they're going to see this and think, oh, here's a woman. I need to compete with her so I can be the one getting man's attention. Because for Jane, she's thinking she's competing with Miss Ingram to get Rochester's attention. While we find out that's not true, that he does love Jane, it's still an odd situation, especially for readers to see and think, oh, I need to make sure I am better than the other woman in order to gain love. And it's just disheartening to think that that's what especially young readers are seeing. Now, on the other woman in this text, Bertha Mason, shows the consequence of defying this womanhood, this ideal womanhood these women are expected to have. Rochester and his marriage to Bertha Mason revealed was not something anyone was expecting first time reading. I know I wasn't. But it shows that to be a woman in that time, you had to stick to those ideals. You had to stick to those stereotypes, or you were going to be shunned. You were going to be shut out from society, and you were not going to you were not allowed to let anyone see you. Bertha Mason denied this ideal womanhood and was punished for it. Whether her defiance was on purpose, was because of an illness she could not control, whether mentally, physically, whatever, especially being put into a prison probably made it much worse. She was not allowed to be seen. She was not the ideal woman. She's not even human in their eyes. Grudem says, Bertha is essentially subhuman, terrifying, and disgusting, all because she does not conform to the ideal Victorian woman. And to readers, this scares them. They see this as what their future will be like if they do not stick to these ideals, if they do not act a certain way. The only way they will be safe from being deemed mad or from being shunned or from being taken from their family, from society, is to fully submit to their husbands. That they must see a man and think, okay, I will obey you. Please don't shut me up. Please don't shut me into an attic. And it breaks my heart to see Bertha Mason treated like this, and just all because of maybe something she couldn't have controlled. I really do want to read the book that focuses on her, because I do want to see what others think about that, and just defying the ideas of womanhood should not be punished. And I think in this book it's shown that way, and it does not make a good impression on readers. Now, before we discover Bertha Mason, we are seeing Rochester and Jane confess their love to one another, which seems like such a great ending before we find out it's not the ending. But after this confession, Rochester's attitude towards Jane completely changes. He starts to compliment her in ways he never did before. They used to banter a lot. Then he starts complimenting her, calling her pretty, and wanting to adorn her in rich clothing and jewelry and just things that she, as she describes herself, a plain woman, would not wear. And with their age gap, there is a huge power imbalance. Age gap, and with him being her boss. And it just doesn't feel right. He even says himself, I have a right to be a little masterful. I am old enough to be your father. Well, this scene, I think, is way before his confession. The fact that at this point he is probably interested in her and still makes that comment, it's quite strange. Readers see this and think, oh, he's older, he's handsome, even though Jane says he's not. That's all I need. Let me accept that. Let me fit into the box of a woman so I can get a man who is older and will take care of me and will give me rich things, even though that's not what anyone should want out of a marriage. And for Jane, marriage with Rochester acts as an end to innocence. The innocent questions, the innocent view of the world. She is so young, still wants to see the world, but the first man she meets is the man she intends to marry. Another thing that is very impressionable to readers. No reader will see that and think, oh, I need to meet the very first man to marry him. That's okay, guys. It's not an impression I would want to make on readers. But again, sorry. Reading and talking at the same time gets me. But I just think so much can be taken from this in the wrong way for readers that they will start to take this into the real world and seek out relationships with people of considerably older ages, gaps, whatever, and try and chase something that is not safe. Now, one of the last things I would like to mention in this novel is the very controversial ending, which is the ending of Jane's freedom. She marries him. She marries Rochester. Even after discovering everything that happened with Bertha Mason, she marries Rochester. And now that he is blind, lost a hand, she must take care of him. She must be a nurse. And while I know some see it as she's still in power, as he's a blind man, he does not have a hand, he cannot take care of himself. But Jane herself says that she does not have time for anything else because she's taking care of Rochester. There is nothing else for her to do besides be nurse and caretaker. And it stated one of the most important functions of woman as a comforter was her role as nurse. That's all she needed to be. In the end, Rochester somehow still molded her into the perfect woman for him. She still despite everything that happened, squeezed into that ideal Victorian woman and did it. Rochester got the perfect woman he wanted, and now she takes care of him, has his child, and while at the end he does get his sight back, he now has her as his wife, as the mother of his child. He has her. There's no going back. He has complete control over her, and will keep it that way. Now, can these harmful ideas of womanhood really influence readers? Yes. The simple answer is yes. Fiction has always had a way of influencing readers, and this novel is no different. There's a lot that I really love about this book that really digs into feminism, and I love Jane as a character. I love this entire book. And no, I don't think it should be banned from young readers. I wish I would have read this sooner. I love it. But there definitely needs to be a point to point out to young readers that some of these harmful things in this book are not things that should be wanted now. While yes, that does kind of seem obvious to us, impressionable readers who are young, especially young girls who see Rochester as just this handsome older man who is taking care of a lady, they're not going to see the obvious in it. They risk the potential of getting hurt because of these influences. And I think it's just important for us to recognize that. And I really do love Jane Eyre, and I think everyone should read it. I've been telling everyone around me and my family to read it, and I was really excited to write this paper and do this presentation. So thank you guys for listening, and sorry this was a little informal. I was just having fun with this tonight, and thank you guys.